The purpose of IRB review is to assure both in advance and by periodic review that appropriate steps are taken to protect the rights and welfare of humans participating as subjects in the research. To accomplish this purpose, IRBs use a group process to review research protocols and related materials to ensure protection of the rights and welfare of human subjects of research. A key goal of IRBs is to protect human subjects from physical or psychological harm, which they attempt to do by reviewing research protocols and related materials. The use of medical records or protected health information, PHI, usually requires IRB review studies, which involve only chart and medical record reviews that pose significant risks to subjects. The most common risk is a breach of confidentiality with the exposure of potentially embarrassing information with the knowledge or consent of the subject. Such studies may also lead to recruitment of subjects into future non-therapeutic studies in a manner which may provoke the subject to ask how his or her record was revealed to someone not part of his or her therapeutic team. The HIPAA privacy rule requires covered entities to obtain each subject's authorization or an IRB waiver of such authorization before a researcher may access the subject's records or other protected health information for research purposes. To access charts or medical records for research purposes, the researcher must submit an application to the IRB for approval. The IRB for health services and health sciences research serve as both the HIPAA Privacy Board and the IRB at UVA. It is critical to remember that even though some activities might be allowed without a HIPAA Privacy Board approval, it may not be allowed with an IRB approval under DHHS regulations. If the researcher wishes to review charts to design a research study or to assess the feasibility of conducting a study, IRB approval is not required if no HIPAA identifiers will be collected. The researcher must, however, complete a request for medical records form and submit this to the UVA Health System Department of Health Information Services. With this form, the research will represent the use or disclosure of the protected health information and how it is solely to review similar purposes preparatory to research, and that this information is necessary for research purposes. The protections of the common rule apply only to living human beings. By contrast, the privacy rule also protects the identifiable health information of deceased persons. The privacy rule contains an exception to the authorization requirement for research that involves the protected health information of descendants. If the research wishes to review charts of descendants, IRB approval is not required. However, the research must complete a request for medical records form and submit this to the UVA Health System Department of Health Information Services. I thought that was very interesting. The IRB also requires a thorough description of interview instruments and questionnaires. When a study involves reviews of records which can be linked to the identity of the subject, the IRB must ensure that subjects' privacy interests will be adequately protected and that any uses or disclosure of protected health information for the research comply with any applicable privacy rule requirements. Where the principal investigator or PI will have personal contact with subjects, a potential for harm exists since they are identified as potential subjects because they either have or are at risk of developing a disease or condition. Simple contact with subjects may present a risk or harm because the sensitivity to discuss a disease or condition they know they have, or because they may not be aware of their condition. When potential subjects are identified, the PI should obtain their consent to participate in the study. Disclosure of information such as that usually collected in epidemiologic studies also presents an ethical concern. All information collected as all the parts of the study is confidential. Data must be stored in a secure manner and must not be shared inappropriately. The principal investigator's protocol should detail how data will be kept and how confidentially the data will be maintained. PIs know that, however, that unlike medical records, research data is not privileged under law unless a certificate of confidentiality is obtained and is current. Many different organizations require different identifiers within their IRB forms, and they hold some different demographics more important than others. So some investigators may personally review medical records and abstract relevant data from the medical records, and they'll require that all medical records to be accessed for study and currently in existence at the time of the IRB submission, or that the desired medical record data is recorded by the investigator in such a way that the patients cannot be identified either directly or indirectly via linkage codes or assigned to the data. And this means that the investigator cannot link names, social security numbers, or any other patient identifier to the data set, leading this so that the resulting research data is necessarily completely anonymous. And for that reason, once the information has been extracted from the medical record, it will not be possible for the investigator to go back to the medical record and add other patient-specific information to this research data set. Strictly confidential. The PI of the research study has legitimate access to the desired medical information that the staff member and or has been granted privileges and provides related care to the patients or is in the position to provide related care including treatment and or diagnostic services to the patients. One example, any health professional providing patient care to a particular set of patients would ordinarily have access to the related medical record information of these patients as part of his or her current or future job responsibilities, and hence would be in a position to serve as a PI of a research study involving a retrospective review of these medical records, regardless of whether he or she actually provides a direct care to that patient's particular needs. And these applications also require a request for waiver of HIPAA authorization.